Okay, so welcome back to the project Autism Person-Centered Planning Masterclass Facilitators. And just as a reminder, the European countries that have been involved in developing this package are North Macedonia, Romania, Bulgaria, Italy, Greece, and Cyprus as well. So a whole group of countries that are involved in developing this, and we've been working on this project for the last 3 years. So lots of content, which is all available or will all be available on the internet in a number of different languages for people that you can download, and you can use the content for free because it is a funded European project. So previously, what we've talked about is the background to person-centered planning and the background to the development of self-advocacy for people with disabilities. We've also covered a little bit on autism. It's a huge subject, autism. When I'm training in autism, I can easily spend 5 full days delivering training. So because this is just giving us enough information to understand autism in terms of the impacts together with making decisions, making choices, communicating. You're not getting the full autism package with this, but that's not what the training is designed to do. It's just supposed to give you a taste of what autism is about. And one of the things that we referred to previously was the core difficulties for people with autism. So that's around communication, social interaction, and imaginative thinking, together with this huge issue of sensory problems, hyper or hyposensitivity, and also what arises from all of this being anxiety. Now, when you're delivering support to somebody about life decisions, transitions, choices they have to make, we have to imagine, and it's not too difficult, that if you have core deficits around imagination, so it's difficult for you to think ahead as to things that you might want to do with your life, around communication, so difficult to communicate with the individual and difficult for them to understand your communication with them, and also difficulties with social interaction and being in social situations, then life planning becomes quite a challenge. But it can be done, and it is done regularly, and certainly it's something that I've been very involved with. It may be that we have to take a different approach to get to our end goal than we would with neurotypical people or people with some other disabilities. And we also need to work on reducing the anxiety all the time. That's the core feature that we must really keep down as far as we can, because anxiety is a block to functioning. So one of the issues that I spoke about before, and this is brought about by this triad of impairment, is the autism type resistance to change. Now, all of us at times in our lives are worried about change. Just getting on a flight, for instance, and traveling can create anxiety because it's the change of scene. It's all the things that we have to think about within that. So thinking about triggers that we all experience, changing from one activity to another perhaps, going on holiday, meeting new people, things like Christmas. Now, okay, we all think Christmas is fab and we can't wait for Christmas to come and open all our presents and have fun at Christmas and be among all our families. Now think about Christmas for a moment. So if you have difficulties with understanding social interaction and processing people, difficulties with communication, difficulties with imagination, so what is this Christmas thing all about? Why do we do this? And this sensory problems. And suddenly in your home, there's little twinkly lights everywhere. There's a tree suddenly appears from nowhere. Why? I don't know, it's just a tree. And I'm very anxious about that tree because it hasn't been there for the rest of the year. Our food changes. We eat different food at Christmas. So we talked before about taste. We talked about the senses. We talked about the smells. Now, the smells that maybe all of us associate with Christmas, those lovely, warm, aromatic, cinnamony smells, to somebody with autism may be totally overpowering and make them very, very anxious. Surprises. Now, Christmas giving presents is all about surprises. For somebody with autism, a surprise is a nightmare because it's something they aren't expecting. They don't want surprises. Thank you very much. I don't like surprises. Don't give me presents and go woo, 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 and make a lot of noise about it. All the whole thing about crinkly wrapping paper, very difficult to cope with. Even things like driving around the place and there's lights and trees and everything everywhere, there's noise everywhere, everywhere is much busier and louder at Christmas. So for many people with autism spectrum conditions, Christmas is an exceedingly difficult time. In my services, very often, not all of them, but very often we never had a Christmas tree because the people living there just couldn't handle Christmas. So it's like, Christmas is off in this building. Different foods, as I've said, having to cope with different tastes, different textures. New clothes. Oh, we've got to get dressed up because it's Christmas. Look at these lovely new clothes I bought for you to wear at Christmas. Let's all dress up and wear silly hats because it's Christmas. I don't want to wear that hat because it's too tight around my head. I don't want to wear those new clothes you bought me because they itch. They're the wrong fabric. I'd rather just stay in the comfortable clothes that I know I'm comfortable in, that don't have labels that stick into me, and I feel safe like that. So please don't make that change for me. Furniture gets moved around in order to accommodate the Christmas tree and the presents. So moving furniture around again can be a nightmare. So I bet nobody's ever thought about Christmas in this way before. You always think about Christmas as a fantastic time where everybody has fun. Yes, everybody might be having fun, but the autistic person in the family is sitting in the corner going, oh, don't do this to me. And their behaviours may be going up because of their anxiety. And that will spoil Christmas for everybody else. And then everybody's going, look, you're spoiling our Christmas. Very difficult time. So what might be a great time for you, holidays, Christmas, things like that, and many traditions like birthdays, surprises, these changes can be a nightmare to a child or adult who's on the autism spectrum. So we maybe need to rethink these sorts of activities as to how we actually make this work. Just to say that at Larnaca Airport, the travel company based at Larnaca Airport started a marvellous initiative for people with autism. And they invited various parent groups to take children and adults with autism to go to the airport, to get the feel for the airport when it was very, very quiet, when there weren't too many travellers around. So they spent time in the airport, desensitizing to the environment. And then they had them all get on the plane and sit on the plane. So they got used to the space that they would have on an aeroplane and things like that, and the noises of an aeroplane. So more and more travel companies, hotels, shops even, they have now specific times in some big supermarkets that are autism shopping time or quiet shopping time. So the music's not going, there's fewer people there, and they're actually promoting this internationally. So people are listening to people with autism and trying to meet their needs. So these are triggers to anxiety. So fear of the unknown, fear of change. We all experience that. We come back to that sensory that we covered before. So lots of sensory issues, confusion, difficulty in understanding what's going on, what's going to happen next, processing the environment and processing people, all of this which we've covered. The frustration then, not being able to communicate your feelings. So you might be feeling really bad inside, but if you can't then tell somebody that I'm feeling really bad inside, I need some help, that leads to frustration. This slow processing means that you don't get the concepts of things in time. So by the time you've actually got to where you need to understand, everybody else has moved on. So you never get the answers. And too many demands. People expecting you to be able to do more than you can, given the difficulties that you have. And some people actually have quite strong phobias. So they're quite phobic about certain things. And as I've mentioned before, one of those things might be dogs. One of them might be children because they're unpredictable, they can make loud noises. Various people have phobias about spiders, don't we? And scorpions and creepy crawly things and snakes, yes. So some of the things that you wouldn't think of being phobic about, such as dogs and children, people with autism can have that same anxiety and fear when they're around a dog or a child that you might have if you're met with a tarantula. So change and transitions, also these are tremendously difficult. And we need to intervene as well on any ritualistic behaviour and obsessional behaviour that gets in the way of allowing those to happen. So people's routines are part of their resistance to change. So people with autism spectrum conditions can develop quite complex routines. Okay, so changes to the physical environment, such as the layout of furniture in a room, or the presence of new people, or the absence of familiar people. And I mentioned before about a guy that I worked with who got really upset, and there was big behavioural incidents because one of the staff was not at work that day and nobody had thought to prepare him for that. This business about the physical environment, many times I have actually screwed furniture to the floor. And people might say, why the heck would you do that? Okay, now think about it from the point of view of autism. If the sofa was always here, and you come home one day and it's not here, it's there, then your world has changed. And all you'll be able to think about is that sofa and the fact that it's changed. And you get really upset about that and you'll want to move the sofa back. What I do when I'm moving furniture around is I'll get the furniture moved, bolt the furniture to the floor in its new place. And you know what? The person with autism magically will accept that. They will accept it. They won't get upset because they know they can't move it back. So they'll try and it won't move, and then they just like go away and forget about it. I had one guy who was throwing dining room chairs and tables over a wall outside his house. And there were 6 people living in his house. It ended up that nobody got anywhere to sit because he kept throwing all the tables and chairs over the wall. So we decided in the end that we would go McDonald's style seating, so that the tables and chairs were all fixed in one unit and we bolted those to the floor. Now, the day that this change happened, all the staff in that unit were terrified. And they were like, this is going to end badly. He's going to get so upset when he comes in, all these tables and chairs are there and you can't move them. It will be bad. And I said, no, it won't. Seen it before, it works, believe me. I brought in extra stuff, not because I knew we needed them, but just to comfort the staff that were supporting. In came the guy in the afternoon, walked into the house and saw all this furniture that was bolted to the floor. And he walked across to the table and chair, put his hand underneath the table to try and pick it up, and it wouldn't move. So then he went to the next one, and that wouldn't move either. He went all round all of them, and you know what? Once he tested them all to see they wouldn't move, you could almost see the relief in his face. And he's like, oh, thank you for doing that for me, because I no longer have to think about throwing tables over a wall. But the funniest part of that story was he went straight out in the garden and threw the garden table over the wall. But that was okay, at least people could sit down to eat. And it was so successful, we even got a two-chair, small table, and put that in his bedroom, and he had that in his bedroom, so he'd have a table and chair in his bedroom as well. Now, the reason I describe that is because we're talking about different ways of approaching problems. We're talking about working with autism and what we know about autism and the difficulties people with autism experience. And if we're facilitating or supporting people with autism through person-centered planning, through life development, we have to start at the point of thinking as an autistic person. So putting ourselves in their shoes and seeing the world from an autism point of view, because they actually experience the world differently than neurotypical people. So if we can become autism and switch our brain around the cogs a little bit to autism thinking and really get ourselves into it and understand it, then we will be able to make a difference, and nothing is impossible. These people might have rigid preferences over food, so they'll only eat a certain colour of food, or certain clothing, as we've discussed before. Things like everyday objects, so they'll only use one type of soap. Well, that's probably because they don't like the smell of other soaps or the feel of other soaps. Or toilet paper, because some toilet papers are actually, sorry, but are much more comfortable than others. Some of them are perfumes, some of them are not. So these are things that we don't even really think about, but somebody that's hypersensitive to these things, then it will make a huge difference. They have a need for routine around their daily activities. They actually, it's not just because they want it, they need it. It's a fundamental need. Things like meals, bedtimes, times that they do things. And routines can become almost like a ritual by nature. So they have to be followed precisely and with attention paid to the tiniest details. So I talked about verbal rituals before and the asking of questions. But one of the rituals might be, okay, I come into a room and I've just transitioned from home to my school or home to my college or my day centre. And because I've now gone through change and transition, I absolutely must touch that flip chart 3 times. I must bang on this desk 4 times. I must turn around in a circle, click my fingers, go, and then I can get on with my day. Because I've made it all safe. I created a platform which is similar. So I know I have to touch that, I have to do that, I have to twiddle, and I have to, and then it's okay. Now this might sound bizarre, but a lot of us do these things, don't we? A lot of us have these little habits and routines, especially in the mornings when we get out of bed. We have our morning routines. We do things in order. Like, I'm going to have my drink now. I'm going to the toilet now. I'm going to have the same drink every morning. I'm going to brush my teeth. Then I'm going to, and you do it in order without even thinking about it most of the time. But for us, if that gets interrupted, and you can't get in to do your teeth when you want to do your teeth, you can normally work around that. But somebody with autism can't. If their routine is broken, their world falls apart and they may become very anxious. So these are important to them, these rituals and routines. So if we look at anxiety as a reaction to change, first is the trigger, which is change. Change happens. This will raise anxiety in the individual if it's sudden change. Their difficulties with processing, understanding what's going on, and communicating will actually add to that anxiety, so it gets greater. So what are we going to see as a result of that? This fight or flight response, obsessions or rituals kicking in, and maybe total shutdown. So isolating, running away, shutting down. These are to some extent, natural neurotypical type responses, but they're far more pronounced in people with autism spectrum disorders. What's fight or flight? Okay, let's just explain fight or flight because I've mentioned it a few times. So if you're in the jungle and you're an animal, okay, and another animal comes towards you, the animal that you are is going to look and think, right, is that animal bigger and fiercer than me? How much of a threat is it to me? Is it going to kill me and eat me? Or is it smaller than me and it's safe and I might eat it? Or just keep out of the way? And we see this in the animal kingdom all the time, don't we? We see a lion appear and we see the gazelle look at the lion and think, oh, blow you, mate, I'm off. So they run away, and they're designed to do that. We call that flight. But if a lion meets another lion or a gazelle meets another gazelle, and they're on common territory and they want to protect their territory, and they think, yeah, this is a fair fight, they may stand and fight. So this is a very primeval instinct, fight or flight, that we all experience at different times in our lives when we're challenged by things. But that's where it comes from. It comes from when we were animals back in the animal kingdom. Fight or flight responses. So common reactions to anxiety, the decreased ability to communicate. And I'm sure many of us, when we've been worried and anxious and not quite sure of ourselves, we find it more difficult to talk to people at that point in time. We maybe can't find the words. We maybe can't find the right words. With autism, it's much more pronounced. Also, the difficulties in making decisions because anxiety has got in the way, and solving problems because your anxiety overloads you. So you're not making rational, sensible decisions. Maybe sometimes if you're really worried about making a decision, you might have to say, look, I can't make that decision. I've just got to sleep on that and maybe I'll get the answer tomorrow. It's a natural response. If you have autism, you're not able to rationalize in that way. You may become aggressive, verbally or mildly physically. This fight or flight reaction again, or you might even get into challenging behavior. And very often when we see even neurotypical people who are highly anxious in a situation, I mean, think about it yourselves. If you're under pressure and you're anxious about something and you really sort of, and somebody comes along and adds more pressure, you may actually have instinctively the feeling that you want to bang them on the nose just to get rid of them. Now, we have inhibitors built in that most of the time actually stop us banging somebody on the nose. People with autism don't have those same inhibitors at work. So we may well get challenging behavior or even for some self-injurious behavior. And again, we can refer to the neurotypical population and some mental health type difficulties where people will cut, self-harm, things like this. Well, people with autism use self-injurious behavior, and some of their self-injurious behavior is very, very dangerous because they're not seeing cause and effect. They're not seeing that if they bang their head on a wall many times, they're going to perhaps turn themselves blind because they're going to detach their retina. All they're doing at the time is trying to bring that anxiety down in their own way. Shut down, as I've said, totally non-communicative, self-isolating, and shutting themselves away from the world. Not good, eh? None of it. So we have to think about, if we're looking at bringing in change, first thing, is the change necessary? Do we actually need this change, or are we doing it for the sake of it? Is it immediate, or will it happen in a while? So is it happening now? Is there a motivator that we can use with this individual that will help them, support them through the change? Now, many people with autism have objects that they're very fond of. As I say, some people have little plastic animals and toys. It might be a particular coloured pen or whatever. And if we actually help them by saying, okay, we're going to take this pen with you, you can hold it, it'll help reduce your anxiety while we're going through the change, then we can build that in. How are you going to communicate the change? Well, we're going to have a look at that in a bit, but how do you communicate the change? And how long does the person take to process the information that there's going to be change? Are there any strategies that we can use that's going to help to bring down the anxiety? Well, this is a system I use a lot. It's what we call the stoplight system. And it actually helps because it'll put the brakes on bad behavior or reduce anxiety, which results in behaviors. It uses a graphic of a stoplight and a closed peg. And I use it with adults just as I use it with children. And this indicates when somebody is behaving well and they're calm and not so anxious, or when they're having difficulty. It actually, because it's visual, it's very clear, and it ignores appropriate comments and questions. And it identifies also the mood state of the individual. In fact, it gives them a way, without communicating verbally, of demonstrating their understanding. Do they understand? Do they understand what's expected of them? Do they understand what's going on around them? So if we look at the mood state first. Okay, at the top, and this is Stephen, there's his peg, and he can put his peg on it. Now, I get these little stoplight systems printed out onto paper, about sort of 10 centimetres deep, and get them laminated, and they can carry them in their pocket. Take them everywhere with them. Brilliant. So this says, I feel angry and out of control. The next is the orange. I'm starting to get fidgety and anxious. This one is, I feel calm, happy, and relaxed. So we can teach people that those different colours actually have different meanings, because if you find it difficult to recognise your own emotional states, then putting colour by that can be a great way of connecting the two. So here we have somebody who's feeling calm, they feel happy, they feel relaxed. Now, if we start to see a few changes in their behaviour, we might prompt them, or we might say, how are you? And they'll put the peg on here. And they'll say, I'm actually starting to feel a bit fidgety and anxious. I'm having a little problem here, help. That means help. What we'll have already done is built in strategies. So it might say something like, if I get to orange, I'll go for a walk around the building. I'll put my headphones on and listen to music. I'll go and sit in a quiet place. These are the strategies that help bring them back to green. Does this make sense? Yeah? We don't want to get to red. This is not where we want to be, but yes, sometimes we are. But we're hoping that we can actually get them to express it by using the stoplight system rather than getting angry, hurting themselves or anybody else. In a learning situation, we can use it to demonstrate understanding. So the red is I don't understand and I'm feeling angry. The orange is I'm worried about this change, or I'm worried about what's expected of me, or this work is too hard, I need help. And the green is I understand and I'm ready for the next step. So we actually can do this without speaking a word. How good is that for people that have major difficulties with expressive communication, which means them speaking, and receptive communication, which means them hearing and understanding. So this is brilliant. And in autism work, we often work without words, or with as few words as possible, because auditory is the difficult one. So we can add structure and predictability to people's lives. So structure will answer several questions. The environment. What are we going to do and where are we going to do it? In terms of time, we can say first we're going to do this and then we're going to do that. When things start, when they finish, when they end, and what's next, what's going to happen next. So we're taking away that element of surprise. Everything is in place. We can also build in routines for key tasks and activities through the day. So we're actually building the routine, aren't we? We're harnessing that autism need to have routine in their lives, and we're using it positively. So questions like, where have I got to be? When have I got to be there? What have I got to do and what happens next? These are key questions that if there's going to be change, we can almost guarantee that the autism person is thinking but not able to express. So as supporters, what we're doing is we're answering the questions before they have to be asked. So before the anxiety comes up. So we use visual supports for this to take away the words. And depending on the person and their levels of understanding, it might be the functional object. So we use this for an activity. So if the next thing is I'm going to make a drink. And this is my level of understanding. The only way I know drink is to see a cup. That's a visual cue to having a drink. Okay. So I can see the cup, so I know the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have a drink. We have objects of reference. So this is an object that represents the task or activity that's coming next. So here we have the rubber duck. Okay. Now rubber duck, we can actually, every time they have a bath, we put the rubber duck in the bath. So, there's a rubber duck. That means I'm going to have a bath. It's association. We can take photographs and cut the photographs in the shape of the object. And we can show somebody a photograph. We can use line drawings. Now, all of this will depend on the person's ability to understand and their level of understanding. We can use drawings to represent things, handwritten or printed sheets and text, or we can use a mixture of the lot, depending on what that person's understanding is. And this is why assessment is so important. Very, very often we use what we call visual schedules. And a visual schedule uses pictures to show which activities will occur and in which sequence. And it's really very autism friendly, because we know that people with autism have good visual recognition and understanding. So we use pictures in this particular case. And this is a laminated sheet with Velcro. And we start at the top and we say, right, this is what's going to happen next. When you're doing that activity, you take that off the schedule and you drop it in the bag at the bottom. So we know that when you come back to the schedule, that's the next thing you're going to do. And so on and so forth until you've worked all the way down. This is huge communication, isn't it? It's huge communication saying, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. This is when it's going to happen, because it's going to happen after that one happens. So it answers all the questions in a way that people with autism spectrum conditions can understand. But visual doesn't have to be little pictures. This is actually a schedule that's written in Greek, but it's a schedule that's used by a guy I work with down in the services in Iena. And this is his schedule. Now, look, we use shopping lists, don't we? We make lists to go to the shops and we tick off when we've got the certain items. We make to-do lists. We make study lists. This is no different. The difference is that this is key to somebody's life and their functioning and bringing down their anxiety. So this guy, every morning, will go through the times. He's got half-hour slots or 15-minute slots. And he'll go through the times, he'll check his schedule, he'll check that what he is expecting to happen is going to happen. If there's a change, they'll actually build change into the schedule. There's triggers for that. And sometimes there's new things that are written, but he copes with that okay, because the rest of the information is all easily understandable. So he's not starting his day in a state of fight or flight. Here's a couple of schedules here, again, that come from our lovely Iron Upper services. And choice, how do we help people with choice? How do we encourage choice? Well, what we do here, because choice is change, choice is decision making, and sometimes people get overloaded. I mean, I know if I go into an Indian restaurant, there's such a huge menu, I can't actually choose. It's overload, it's too much. So let's think about how we do choice. We've got the schedule and we put a question mark. So the question mark means this means choice. And then what they do is they take the choice card off the schedule, match it up with the question mark that's on the wall. And underneath here are the choices of activities. So now I've come to a choice, I'm coming off my schedule and I'm going onto this schedule. It's all very logical, where I can choose what I do next. And we keep it to 2 or 3 choices because we don't want overload. We can teach people and train people about change. So if change is going to happen, we give them warning, we give them time to process that there is going to be change. So we teach them about the change part. So we build it into their schedules, even when there isn't change going to happen, just so that we can actually help them to get used to it and to not be frightened by change. So we build the change card in, and then we'll give them strategies for reducing their anxiety around that. And then once that change has happened, then this is what's going to happen after the change. Do you see? It's answering all the questions. And it's answering the questions in a way that people can very easily understand. So positive reinforcement systems can be used to motivate and complete activities, motivate them to complete activities and to reinforce positive behavioural changes. So we have here a reward choice schedule. First we're going to do this and then we're going to do this. Very simple. First we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And we have actual rewards that we decide with them or with their family what the reward should be. And they get a reward every time they do a certain thing. Now, one of the guys I work with in Iron Upper, his particular favourite object is a truck. And he, all the time he has to see his truck, he has to be able to see it. So the truck is there, but every time he completes a set of activities, he gets a truck card. So the truck cards, once he's got 3 or 4 truck cards, then he gets to spend time with his truck. So he knows he's going to get the truck back, he knows he's going to spend time with it, so he doesn't have to think about it anymore. And he's working towards spending time with his truck. So that becomes a motivator for him to actually do stuff. Countdown to change. One of the things that we use quite often are these egg timers, and they're special ones you can buy from the internet. And sometimes they're 15 minutes, sometimes they're 5 minutes, however long we want to use. You can use cooking timers and other things as well, so audio or visual. And they're always the same. Because they're always the same, it's very reassuring. And it gives the person time to process change. So we can say things like, okay, putting the timer down, in 10 minutes, this is what's going to happen next. So it gives them time to process that. It's their processing time. And they'll do things just because the timer tells them to do it, or they'll stop doing things because the timer tells them. Not because you have, because what you're doing is verbal. And they're not processing verbal in the same way as they are visual. So if it's a visual prompt, then they're more likely to succeed. One of the things that parents tell us a lot, and I've experienced with people with autism, is difficulties with travel. So they go from home to school every day the same route, which is fine, until there's a road diversion and they can't take the same route to school. Now we do it, but we probably don't realise we do it, but autistic people certainly do it because they're so visual. you look for certain markers on the route. Okay, there's the bowling alley. I know where I am because there's the bowling alley. I know where I am because there's that church. I know where I am because there's that shop. Okay, people with autism are the same. But if you have to go off your route and they can't see the bowling alley, they can't see the shop, they can't see the church, then they will become anxious that they're not going to the same place. So we have children in the back of cars screaming, hitting, pulling their mum's hair because suddenly their world has changed. So one of the things we've advised a whole lot of parents to do, which I think is fabulous, is just simply put a picture of your destination where it's visible from throughout the car. So as long as that picture is there with the destination on it, it doesn't matter where you go. Because you know, you can reassure them that's still where we're going. That hasn't changed. That's still where we're going. So you might have lost your markers, doesn't matter. That's still where we're going. We have to consider that people with autism, in terms of processing information, they have short-term difficulties with this short-term holding on to information. They call the working memory or an executive function, that's in posh words. And so as soon as they come off their regular route, they panic. So as long as we've got something to reassure them, they can just stick this above the rear view mirror or actually have it in your hand to give to them. And believe me, behaviours come down. And we can have countdown calendars and things. So something is going to happen. Okay, we're going on holiday, but we're not going right now. We're going on holiday in a few days' time, or we're going to go to the shop in a few days' time, because people with autism spectrum conditions often have difficulty understanding the concept of how long time is. So they expect something to happen now. And if it doesn't happen now, then they get upset about that and they're biting their hands and things. So this one, because it's easier to see on the slide. Okay, we're going to the toy store on Saturday. So this is the countdown to Saturday. We're making it visual. Sometimes we use sleeps and we put little pictures of beds and how many sleeps before something happens. Now what we're doing is we're creating a visual structure to time with this, which they do understand, believe me. These things do work. So making it visual will be really, really helpful. There's a young man that I know whose mother had to fly abroad for a few days to a wedding, and he was to stay here. And they were all really, really worried about him coping with his mum going abroad for the first time ever and leaving him alone at home with his family now. And so what we did for him, we did a map of Europe, including Great Britain. We made a little aeroplane, so it was all visual, and we showed the plane going to Great Britain. And then we put how many sleep. We had a picture of mum, and mum's picture was going with the aeroplane over there. The rest of the family was still here. And we put the family or the place that she'd be staying, picture of that. And so there's mum, she's going to stay here, and she'll be there for 4 sleeps. And he actually moved the aeroplane and he counted the sleeps every day, took the sleep off before mum came back. And then he did the plane coming back. And then he went and met her at the airport. He took her to the airport, he met her at the airport. Important because he could see that she'd gone, right? No problem at all. There was no behaviours, there was no anxiety, there were no difficulties. Had we not done that, it would have been a nightmare for everybody. So this is the sort of way that we can manipulate situations using these systems. So when I say manipulating, I'm using that in a positive way. Because what we're doing is we're all the time bringing down that anxiety, taking into account the difficulties in communication, imagination, and social interaction, and also the sensory difficulties. In terms of the rituals and obsessions, unless they become life-threatening or too challenging, we understand that these individuals need these things in their lives. They fundamentally need them in their lives, just like people need their mobile phones. If I was to say, right, I'm taking your mobile phone away, you're never getting another one, the only thing you'd be able to ever think about was the mobile phone. So people use mobile phones, we all do. So that brings it home as to how important these rituals and obsessions are to these autistic people. So we don't try and stop people having their rituals. We don't try and stop people having their obsessions, as I say, until it becomes really problematic in their lives, which it can, but we don't intervene if it doesn't. Let them be built into life. Let them be part of their lives. And even just the process of using a schedule every day in the same way is part of a ritual. So we're using it very, very positively. Okay, let's have a break there.